Okay, we've been walking the show field this morning, and we have finally found a guy that we've been trying to locate for the last week out here, Mac McKellar. Mac, you're a hard guy to find. I know you're a popular guy with Pontiac, and we appreciate you coming out to the show. We know you've got your own personal car out here on display. We're going to be filming it, and I'd like you to tell us about it. I know it's rare, and I'd like our viewers out there to really get the history of this vehicle. So what do you have on display?
Well, the car is basically a 1963 Grand Prix, which I had owned while I was still working for Pontiac, and I'd been with Pontiac when I retired for about almost 45 years. So when I finally retired in 1982, they decided that they would pull this out of the basement. They found the only remaining overhead cam V8, which I had worked on back in 1963.
Was it supposed to be produced, or was it something?
Well, it was an experimental program which Pontiac had gotten into after we had been banned from racing at NASCAR, and in effect it had been turned off from racing altogether. So John DeLorean, who was our chief engineer at the time, said, well, if we can't do that, we'd like to have a hotter street car. And of course at that time we'd been working on the overhead cam 6 with the unique construction that was developed for it. And so it's kind of a natural to see, well, what can we do with the V8 to achieve the same results, the high RPM capability, and of course the better breathing aspects that you can get with an overhead cam. And so John DeLorean was quite progressive in his thinking on those things, and it was very familiar with the European approach, where they had been using overhead cams.
So what we're looking at is a prototype vehicle. Then
right,
your vehicle is a.
It's one of a kind, and they dug it out of the basement. It was on the rack down there. It was the only one remaining out of 12 experimental engines, and some of the parts were missing, and they managed to, with my help, we finally got it all together, and sold it to me for a nominal sum to make it legal. And then I arranged to have it installed in this 1963 car.
What kind of horsepower did this 421 put out?
With the equipment that's on it, it should be around 450 horsepower, and it had the RPM capability of 6,500, which was pretty good for a big 421 cubic inch V8, you know.
What kind of rear end ratio is in the car right now?
Well, right now it's just a stock 3-2-3 ratio.
Highway type gear.
Right, because I don't plan to use it on the drag strip. There are no replacement parts for it, so once it's blown up, why, that's it.
Was it ever run at the proving grounds, or you know?
This particular engine was a dynamometer engine. There were proving ground runs made with the other engines. The main thrust of the program was to try to use a belt drive on the big V8, but we found we'd have to go to a much wider belt to carry all the loads involved with a big valve V8. So but we did run far enough so that we knew what the capability of the engine was, and it was doing very well. I can't quote you any figures because at the proving ground we ran with a 5-passenger load and almost a 5,000-pound car. So so the figures are usually rather not very optimistic, shall we say. So, okay. I mean, they're not. But it would be probably a 5 or 6. No, at least probably a 5-second car, 0 to 60, I would expect would be the capabilities of it, you know, in a big car. You know.
Well, I'd like to personally thank you for spending some time with us here this morning.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk
telling us
you, yeah,
about that prototype vehicle and one of a kind type vehicle.
Everybody likes to talk about his own car, right?
Well,
thanks for
yeah, but you got something. You got something that I know everybody likes to talk about their own, but you got something that nobody else has got that's even close.
Well,
but. Hey, it's been a pleasure, and I thank you again for stopping by and visiting.
It's been my pleasure, too. Thank you much.
Okay, Mac.
Okay, very good.